Hi, I'm Sally, getting ready to depart on a 10-day trek. We will be doing the Alpamayo Circuit in Peru. So that is a hike that incorporates most of the Santa Cruz trek and then branches off and carries on for about another week. Once I'm done the hike, I will make another video to explain what I would have done differently or what was really important that I think I really want to emphasize. And I'll attach that to the end of this video. So stick around till the end to see that. So I will be doing this hike with one friend and we will be sharing a tent and some of our cooking supplies. No guide, no mules, but we are able to resupply some snacks and basic instant noodles and things at a store about 5 days along the route. So this hike is at high elevations between 3,500 meters and 5,000 meters. So the key is going to be using lightweight gear, but we also need to bring a lot of warm layers because the temperatures are going to fluctuate potentially between 25 degrees Celsius in the morning down to as low as -5 degrees Celsius at night. And we'll also be contending with some very serious UV rays. So I have tried to construct this list to protect us from the sun, keep us warm at night, but not bog us down on these really tough climbs. So first of all, I'll be carrying this Asia Pro 55 from Osprey. I've used this twice before. Really like this pack. It's ultralight but still structured. I put a little whistle on it here and a Canadian flag. For a tent, I have this brand new Durston X-Mid Solid 2. I've used this once to make sure I understand how to set it up. This is a trekking pole supported tent, so it does not have any dedicated tent poles that will help keep it small and light. I've made my own footprint here out of window covering plastic. I have a video about that. I'm bringing some extra pegs in case it's really windy and we need extra stakeouts or we lose one or two. I also bought some extra guy lines that I need to attach to the extra points just in case it's really windy. And I bought this fluorescent tape so that I can tie it to the guy outs so that I don't trip over them. So the reason I decided on the solid is to hopefully help keep us a little bit warmer. If the tent gets wet inside while we're packing up, I brought this Swedish dish towel just to wipe that off so that we can dry it out before we put our things inside. For sleeping mat, I have this winter Sea to Summit Ether Light XR Pro Thermal Core Regular. And I really like the stuffed sacks on these because you can use them to inflate the mattress with very little effort. I have a tiny pillow because I need to keep propped up because of a medical condition. My sleeping bag is a Thermarest Parsec -6. Now ideally I would have a 4-season sleeping bag instead of a 3-season sleeping bag like this. I'd rather have something with a rating for like say -15, but I just don't, and I don't want to spend the money on it. So I have some ideas about how to keep warm using this sleeping bag. And this is a mummy bag, which I just find I really like to put the hood up and cinch it tight around my face when I'm camping in cold weather. I really can't imagine using a quilt in those conditions. One of my ideas for keeping us warm at night is to bring this down blanket. So this is a packable down blanket, off-brand, and I've used it car camping to lay over my sleeping bag and it works really well. And it's very light. So I'm actually hoping to sew on some kind of mechanism, like some fabric straps with Velcro that we could use to make sure this doesn't slide off our sleeping bags. And maybe this is really genius or really stupid, but my idea is if we cover both of our sleeping bags with it, the warmth can really accumulate and we can pool our body heat together. It's either really silly or really genius. I will let you know how it goes and do a video if we do end up using this. I'll be wearing these Salomon Speedcross 6s. I've already walked about 1,000 kilometers in these, but the tread is still good. These are my poles. These are not my usual poles. They're a lot heavier because they are adult size. They're a European brand, TUV. Never heard of it, but I bought these at a consignment store in Zurich, and I've used them a lot. They're really worn out, but they are high enough to support my tent, which means if my one of her poles breaks, we'll still be able to set up the tent. And it also means that once she comes back to Canada, I'll be able to sleep in that tent solo because I'm going to stay longer in Peru. So what I'll be wearing every day when I'm hiking, I have a merino sports bra. I have a long sleeve crew neck merino in a dark color to provide that UV protection. I have a brand new Patagonia R1 Air vest. I just like the idea of a fleece against the back of my backpack. because it's a bit more breathable and won't get damp if I get really sweaty. The pants I chose were these Wind River pants that are actually made for, I think, primarily things like fishing. And what I like about them is, first of all, they have a lot of pockets, including zippered pockets on the side, and they are lined, which I just think this will provide a little bit more warmth hiking in those high elevations than my typical sort of nylon hiking pants. I'm going to wear a watch just to make sure we don't miss our ride as we're coming out the other end of the trail, just in case our phones have died. I've got sunglasses, and I picked some that are basically unbreakable, because if we were to lose or break our sunglasses up there, that could be really devastating at those elevations. That's happened to me before, and I burnt my eyes. It's very unpleasant. And I bought this strap from the dollar store to really make sure that I don't accidentally toss them somewhere. Then finally, I have this dorky bucket hat because, again, at these elevations, I think either a bucket hat or a sun hoodie are really the only two reliable options, and it means not having to wear as much sunscreen. So for additional layers that I'll definitely be wearing at night, possibly sometimes during the day, I've got an air mesh hoodie, and I love having the hoodie for sleeping in. And I decided, what the heck, I'm gonna bring my Senchi too, because these are both really lightweight and small, and I need all the warmth I can get. After that, I've got my Cerium hoodie. This is from Arc'teryx, 800 power down. This may seem like overkill, but based on the trips that I just did last year in the Scottish Highlands and in Norway and Sweden, I was still cold wearing most of these layers, and it was not as cold as it's going to be on this trip. So I just know I really need to add more on top of what I've already gotten used to wearing. For rain, I've got a really good rain jacket. This is a Helly Hansen Verglass jacket. I have a review of this along with most of my other stuff on my YouTube page. And this will be good for wind and a bit of extra insulation, as well as, of course, being waterproof. I'm not bringing real rain pants this time, but I am bringing this pair of Frogstog's cheap rain pants. They're about $20 online. They're quite delicate, but they're very, very waterproof. And I just think, in case it is really pouring, my hiking pants are mostly cotton, I believe. So I really don't want those to get soaking wet because they will be really cold. And it might also be pretty windy at times, so I think having this pair of rain pants will come in handy sometimes. I'm hoping it's not going to be raining so often that a more sturdy pair of rain pants would be warranted. For pajamas, I have a pair of merino long johns and a long sleeve merino top. I will be wearing all of those layers on top of this though. And of course, a pair of warm wool socks. I've got 2 extra pairs of socks, one just for nighttime and one for daytime. Lastly, I have this ridiculous pair of nature hike down pants. I wore these in Arctic Norway and Sweden to sleep in, and they really do turn a 3-season sleeping bag into something a lot closer to a 4-season sleeping bag. So I'm bringing them again. They do pack down, very small, they're very light, and they're very cozy. For sleeping and maybe daytime use, especially in the evenings and early mornings, got a merino toque and a merino buff. I really like having this to sleep if I need something pulled right over my mouth and nose, and I don't want to get a bunch of condensation right inside of my mummy bag. And a pair of gloves. And I put everything in these dollar store washing machine bags. For drinking water, I have this Nalgene. I will also pick up just a regular plastic water bottle to use as my second bottle, but at least I know this one's not going to get crushed or punctured or anything like that. I've got an MSR stove that's meant for windy conditions. We will need to buy some fuel for it once we get there. It comes with this foil to go around the pot to shield the flame from the wind and to reflect the heat back onto the pot so that your fuel goes a little bit further. Finally, I have a lighter and some matches in a Ziploc bag. I also always keep my spork in the little bag here so that I don't forget. For cooking, I have this ever-new titanium pot. Comes from Japan. Love this little pot. It is definitely a lot lighter than my old one. Brand new, I got this little aluminum mug, and this just means that my friend and I won't have to both be trying to eat and drink out of this single small pot. I know that we're going to want to have some coffee in the morning as we get breakfast ready, so this way we can both have some coffee. So for water purification, other than boiling it, we will be using a combination of this bee-free filter and tabs. So I actually found this in Norway in a hut. Someone left it behind. Turns out there's a hole in it, but I fixed it. And the reason I'm bringing this as well as the tabs is because cryptosporidium, I believe, is quite common. Where we're going, there's going to be a lot of livestock, poo everywhere. Cryptosporidium is not something we want to come down with when we're hiking. So this will filter the cryptosporidium. This will kill everything else. Now I've also got a few of these types of tablets, which will kill cryptosporidium, but they're required to sit in the water for 4 hours, and it has to be either dark or in an opaque bottle. So I think we could use these overnight, but I don't think we want to be relying on these. This is the food that I will be bringing. It's about 10 pounds. We will be able to buy instant noodles and cookies, like I mentioned, about 5 days in. So I've tried to factor that in. This is going to be the most challenging part of this trip, is hauling this 10 pounds of food up the first few days of elevation gain when we are still not fully acclimatized. But on the other hand, I got a bit hungry on my Norway trip, so I didn't want to sell myself short. I'll of course have my phone. I am bringing this 10,000 gigahertz battery bank. This is the carbon fiber, the newest and greatest, lightest one. Plus I have a cord because I decided that for this trip, a small solar panel made a lot of sense, because we're going to be at really high elevations, which means that this should charge pretty efficiently. It was inexpensive and it weighs less than a second battery bank, and I'm pretty confident that I'm going to get at least one full charge of this out of this. So what I'll do is hook this on my backpack or put it beside the tent, keep it hooked up to the battery bank with the cord, and then once the battery bank is full, I can charge my phone with it. I think it's hard to charge a phone directly with this because sometimes the energy output is not sufficient. So this is called an E10 mini flexible solar charger from Flex Solar, and I might do a video when I get home with a review of this. Headlamp, very important. I like having this fancier headlamp which has multiple settings on it, and it's got a rechargeable battery that should last the whole trip. Got a bunch of extra Ziploc bags. These always are very much appreciated. I have a bunch of money that I'm going to keep with me. Got a poo shovel and a lot of toilet paper. It is 10 days and there's not going to be any toilet paper en route. So God willing, we don't get diarrhea. Passport and health insurance information in a Ziploc bag. Small sort of first aid kit. So I've got some azithromycin I got prescribed from the travel doctor just in case we get really terrible diarrhea. Some antibiotic cream. These incredible little pads that you can stick to the back of your heel if you're having a problem with your shoes. They're called Reskin and they're amazing. You can use them for years. And some basic medications for, a bad cold or tummy upset, etc. I've also got some repair items in here, including some tenacious tape and some really strong duct tape. And always a safety pin for popping blisters. Got toiletries here, including sunscreen, lip chap, really important at those elevations. Some soap strips so I can wash my hands properly now and again. And my Diamox for avoiding elevation sickness symptoms. I got this little pouch from Matador. It is filled with sunscreen and I love this. It's so lightweight and I just put the exact amount I want in there. I'm going to hang it from my backpack so that I'm never hesitant to put on another layer of sunscreen. At those elevations, it's going to be super important. I've got an e-reader. It will be in a Ziploc bag, of course, and it's only going to be light out for 12 hours a day. It's going to be really cold the rest of the time, so I think we're going to be spending quite a bit of time just hanging out in the tent reading. All of my clothes and my sleeping system, everything that could get wet is going to go in one of these special compactor bags. I have a video about these and I really recommend using them instead of a pack cover. They're way more effective and they're very hard to poke holes in. Finally, navigation and safety. I have this personal locator beacon just in case we need to call for help, and a space blanket. I've got a printout of our itinerary where I've written down the names of the campsites, the elevation, so that we can get a quick sense of what we're doing that day and what the key facts are. I bought a topographical map for the region, and I have marked down where we are going. So first of all, I did cut it so that I'm not bringing a whole bunch of extra map. This will just make it easier to get out and look at in the tent. And I don't actually really need the GPS coordinates. I just need the main part of the map. So as you can see, I've marked down our route. I've also marked down exit points if we need to get off the trail. I've marked down the campsites that we're anticipating staying at. I also cut out the legend so we can bring that with us. So this map actually came from the German Alpine Club, but fortunately it is in English as well as other languages. Apparently the trail itself, the way it's marked on here, is actually not accurate. So we are not fully relying on this, but I just want to make sure that we have every possible tool at our disposal to not get lost, because a lot of people do get lost on this route. They end up in the wrong village or they just miss the turnoff. So I really want to make sure that we have every advantage. We will also have a GPX route marked on both of our phones. And finally, we'll be able to refer to the instructions and the hand-drawn maps in this book. But I don't want to carry the whole thing because it's heavy. So I took a picture of every single page that was relevant, printed it out, oriented it, and made little notes and arrows to make it clear what direction and orientation to use when looking at the maps. So once we get there, we'll need to buy fuel, like I mentioned, and we'll need to get a permit for this national park and carry that with us. But other than that, that is everything that I will be bringing with me. So how will I be getting all of that to Peru in one piece? I have this big sort of sack that goes right over all of my backpack, my shoes, my hiking poles, everything. And then that way I can check the whole thing without worrying about the straps getting torn off or other damage. And then when I'm out hiking, I'll put all of my extra equipment that I don't need to bring with me, like my extra clothes, my day pack. I will put that in here and leave it at the hotel. I made sure that that would be okay with them. Now, of course, to acclimatize properly before this hike, which is very important, we will be bringing some extra supplies for a few day hikes before we head out on this hike. So that means bringing a day pack, some extra snacks, extra clothes and socks, just so we don't need to dirty up our clothes that we'll be bringing on the hike. And those will be staying at the hotel while we are off trekking for 10 days. It's me again. I am back in Canada. The trip went pretty well. It was one of the more grueling things I've ever done in my life, and I will make a video about it. So there was one item that I brought that I didn't really need, and that was this down blanket. I did use this a few nights because I would have been a bit chilly otherwise, but I definitely would have survived without it, as would my friend, despite having 3 season sleeping bags. And that's because we had winter sleeping pads, we had down pants, down jackets, and this Durston X Mid Solid kept us way warmer, I think, than a regular summer tent would have. So this has less mesh on it significantly than my other tents. It is a little bit heavier and bulkier because of that. The temperature did drop below freezing at least once or twice, and we were pretty toasty in here, even with our 3 season sleeping bags. That is partly because we had winter sleeping mats and we had down pants on, as well as all of our upper layers, including down jackets. But that really goes to show that I think having a tent that's purposely made for cooler temperatures and sharing that tent with someone else makes a huge difference. So I'm super glad that I bought this tent for this trip because it was the lightest weight while still maintaining enough warmth. I will say I brought too many tent pegs. I brought 12 of varying sizes, and this Durston X Mid really only requires, strictly speaking, 4, but I would have still brought a few extra just in case of the conditions or the terrain that I had to pitch it on. I maybe would have brought, say, 6 or 7. I also maybe should have not bothered bringing the tent bag because my hands were too cold, usually to put it in and out of the bag, so I ended up just shoving it right into my backpack. I was surprised by how hot it was a few days, and unfortunately, I mistakenly brought a thicker merino long sleeve shirt instead of the thin one that I intended to bring, which would have been just a little bit cooler. But something you could consider bringing would be a merino blend that's specifically designed to be nice and cool. If you're only going to bring one shirt though, just bring a thin long sleeve merino, preferably in a darker color to protect you from those super powerful UV rays up there. So the two of us brought about as much food as we could possibly carry, and we did not take advantage of a resupply. I brought less than a pound of food a day for 10 days. And that might be perfectly fine for a 2 or 3 day trip to bring that amount, but over 10 days, I have come to realize that is not sustainable. I should have been force feeding myself a package of instant noodles every night or some other simple carbs, because simple carbs are the easiest to digest at altitude. And especially as time went on, I started really getting that hiker hunger, and by the end of the trip, I was severely underfueled. I could barely move the next day. Another couple of things that I would consider doing differently is not bringing one of these. I just found this Be Free was so slow, and I don't know if there's something wrong with it. I did find it, so I don't know. Maybe it's not as fast as it's supposed to be, but it was excruciating. And you have to drink a lot when you're at high altitude because your body dries out so fast. And when you're on Diamox, that means you have to drink even more. And this was just so tedious for the two of us to filter. So I would go with something that maybe has a bit of a faster filter rate, or I would buy this style of SteriPen that's rechargeable from USB, and I would recharge it using the solar panel that I brought, which by the way worked awesome. It charges up so fast at those elevations when the weather is good. So that would have really made our drinking water purification a lot more efficient and less painful. Something else we both sort of wish we'd done differently is bought or rented a two-way satellite communication device. I brought this beacon, which is great because there's no subscription fee. It has an SOS button, it sends your coordinates. However, there's not a lot of helicopter rescues in the Andes. There's not a lot of helicopters. And there were times when we wished we had that two-way communication because it would have let us check the weather, which would have been really useful given that there were some lightning storms when we were there, and it would have been nice to know whether to expect those or not. It would have also been great to be able to let someone know if we were going to be delayed coming out of there. As it was, I felt a lot of pressure to get out on the day that we had planned so that people wouldn't begin to worry. But that was also, subject to change because of weather or conditions. That made me quite nervous. Other than that, I wouldn't have changed anything. Everything I brought worked really well. I would not have been able to carry anymore. It was absolutely grueling as it was. Despite the distances not being very far, the elevation and the steepness of the terrain and the relentlessness of the terrain meant that we were really capped out with what we could bring. I would not have wanted to bring a single ounce more, quite honestly. Even as it was extremely challenging. So that's it. I hope that was helpful. Subscribe if you want to see the vlog that I will be making after this adventure, as well as some vlogs about other hikes in the same area, including the Huayhuash and some day hikes. Thanks for watching. I will see you out there.